the woman at the gate. The wind moved over the prairie like a whispered warning. Jack Callahan stood on the porch of his ranch house, watching the last threads of daylight vanish behind the hills. Evening always made the land seem lonelier, the silence stretching until it filled the bones. He liked it that way. Silence didn't lie. Then he saw her. At first, she was no more than a shadow on the dirt road, swaying under the weight of exhaustion. As she drew closer, he saw the truth of her condition. The hollow cheeks, the trembling hands clutching her coat closed over a rounded belly. She stopped by the gate, too weak to call out. Jack's first instinct was caution. Strangers didn't come this far unless they were running from something. He stepped down from the porch, boots crunching in the dry gravel. "Evening," he said, voice low. "You lost." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Only when he opened the gate did she find her voice, thin, quivering, yet deliberate. "I'm not lost, just out of options." Her eyes, large and desperate, lifted to meet his. "Please, I need shelter. I'll work my whole life if I have to. Her hand pressed against her stomach. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, the world went utterly still. Jack didn't move, didn't breathe. The image of another woman, another stormy night, flashed across his mind. Clara, standing in this same yard years ago, hair whipping in the wind, asking him to come in from the rain. She had been the last person he'd ever taken in, and she'd been gone for 5 years. He exhaled slowly. "Name?" "Evelyn," she whispered. "Evelyn Hart." Her knees buckled before she could say more. He caught her, the cold of her skin startling beneath his calloused hands. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as bird bone. With one arm beneath her shoulders, he half carried her into the house. Inside, the old clock ticked like a heartbeat. He laid her on the couch near the fireplace, then tossed kindling onto the dying embers until the flames stirred. The light flickered over her face, pale, tired, streaked with tears and rain. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said quietly. She stared into the fire. "He left," she murmured. "My husband. We lost everything after the drought. He said he'd find work. That was 2 months ago. I waited until I couldn't anymore." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I walked from town to town. No one would take me in." Jack listened without interrupting. Her words carried the heavy truth of survival, and he recognized it well. He poured her a cup of warm water, slid it into her shaking hands, and leaned against the mantel. "This place isn't much," he said finally, "but it's dry. You can stay the night. Tomorrow, we'll figure out where you need to go." She nodded, but her gaze never left the flames. "I don't have anywhere to go." The sentence hung between them, fragile and irreversible. Jack turned away before she could see the conflict flicker across his face. He didn't want company. The ranch ran fine with his own 2 hands. People brought noise, memories, attachments, things he had buried deep beneath the soil of this land. Yet there she was, breathing softly on his couch, the faint rhythm of life stirring beneath her ribs. He went to the kitchen, fetched her a bowl of stew he'd made that morning, and set it beside her. She ate slowly, each bite like a small act of gratitude. When she was done, she whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Callahan." "Jack Callahan." Her lips curved faintly. "You live here alone?" "Always have," he lied. Thunder rumbled outside, distant but promising more rain. Jack stirred the fire and stood watching her, uncertain why the sight of her brought both comfort and unease. She wasn't just another wanderer. There was something about her calm endurance, the quiet way she met his gaze without fear or expectation. He offered her a blanket. "You can rest here tonight. The storm will pass by morning." She nodded. As she lay down, she murmured softly, almost to herself, "I'll work for it. I don't take kindness for free." Jack looked down at her one last time. "We'll talk about work tomorrow," he said. But in truth, he knew he wouldn't ask her to lift a finger until she was strong again. He stepped out onto the porch as the wind picked up, the horizon swallowed by darkness. Rain began to fall, slow, deliberate drops that tapped against the railing. The sound carried him backward, 5 years, to another storm, another promise he couldn't keep. Inside, Evelyn shifted in her sleep, her hand resting over her belly. The firelight danced over her face, softening the harsh lines of exhaustion. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty. Jack leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the sky. He told himself it was just one night. But deep down, he already knew nothing about this woman's arrival would be simple. And as lightning split the distant hills, he whispered to no one, "Don't let me make the same mistake twice." The storm answered with silence. Shadows of the past. Morning arrived quiet and gray. The rain gone, but its memory clinging to the earth in damp mist. The smell of wet hay drifted through the open window, mingling with the scent of bread baking in the kitchen. Evelyn stirred awake on the couch, her body heavy from exhaustion, her mind unsure whether last night had been mercy or a dream. Across the room, Jack Callahan moved with quiet purpose, pouring coffee into 2 tin mugs. He looked larger in daylight, broad-shouldered, unbending, yet softened by the lines of solitude carved deep into his face. He set a mug beside her. "Morning," he said. Evelyn sat up slowly. "You didn't have to." "I did." He interrupted, not unkindly. "You need strength if you plan on working." She blinked, uncertain whether he meant it or was simply offering dignity in the form of a promise she'd made herself. Either way, she nodded. "Thank you." They ate in near silence, the crackle of the fire the only sound between them. Outside, the prairie stretched endless and gold, the ranch house a small island in a sea of grass. Jack spoke first. "You said your husband left." Evelyn froze, her spoon halfway to her lips. "He did. 2 months ago. He said he'd come back once he found work." "Did he?" She met his eyes, steady, wounded, defiant. "No." Jack looked away. "Then you're better off." His words were simple, but they landed with quiet finality. Evelyn didn't answer. She wanted to tell him Mark hadn't always been cruel. That once he'd been kind, full of plans, laughter, and promises. But memories were dangerous things. They turned betrayal into longing. So she swallowed the truth and let silence return. Later, she followed Jack outside. The ranch unfolded in all directions, fields bordered by split-rail fences, a stable standing against the light. Horses shifted within, their dark eyes curious. "You can start here," he said. "Feed's low, but they'll need hay brought in from the barn. Move slow, don't let them smell fear." Evelyn managed a smile. "I don't scare easy." He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing more. For the next few hours, they worked side by side, speaking little. Jack's motions were efficient, born of years repeating the same tasks. Evelyn learned by watching, the rhythm of work calming her nerves, the vast silence of the plains of balm she hadn't expected. When she stumbled once, Jack reached to steady her. His hand lingered a second too long before he drew back. Neither spoke of it, but both felt the shift, small, dangerous, undeniable. That evening, Evelyn found an old photograph tucked in a book on the shelf. It showed a woman with bright eyes and wind-tangled hair standing beside Jack, laughter frozen in time. She looked happy. "Whole. She was your wife," Evelyn said softly when Jack entered. He paused, eyes on the picture in her hand. "Clara, what happened?" "The river took her," he said simply. "Storm came fast that year. By the time I found her," his voice trailed off unfinished. He didn't need to say more. Evelyn set the photo down carefully. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said. "She was the only good thing I ever had. The rest just working time." Evelyn wanted to ask if he ever stopped missing her, but his expression, hard, still almost reverent, kept her silent. After dinner, she sat by the window, mending a torn shirt while Jack read beside the fire. The flicker of light softened the edges of his sternness, revealing something quieter beneath. Loneliness, perhaps, or the gentler ache of remembering what once was. "Thank you," she said suddenly. He looked up. "For what?" "For not asking for anything in return." He stared into the flames. "Don't thank me yet." Outside, the wind rose, carrying the scent of rain again. Evelyn shivered, but not from cold. The walls felt closer tonight, the air thicker with things neither of them dared name. When she went to her room, she paused at the door. "You don't have to be alone all the time, Jack." He didn't turn, but she saw the way his shoulders stiffened. Solitude's easier than losing again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's not easier, just emptier. Their eyes met, hers soft and searching, his guarded yet flickering with something like recognition. The moment lingered, fragile as the space between breath and confession. Then Evelyn turned away. After she was gone, Jack sat in the dim glow of the fire, Clara's photo resting beside him. He stared at it until the edges blurred and the woman in the picture seemed to fade into the smoke. He knew he shouldn't feel what he felt. Not for this stranger who'd arrived broken and pregnant. Not while another woman's memory still haunted these walls. But when he closed his eyes, it was Evelyn's voice he heard, quiet, trembling, alive. Outside, thunder murmured across the plains once more. He told himself it was only the storm returning. But in truth, it was something far more dangerous, something stirring again inside his chest. The heart's betrayal. The wind howled through the valley, sweeping sheets of snow across the dark horizon. Jack Callahan bolted the stable doors against the storm, his breath fogging in the cold. He had seen winters like this before, bitter, merciless, the kind that stripped a man's resolve bare. Inside the house, Evelyn waited, hands pressed to her swollen belly, the fire crackling weakly in the hearth. By the time Jack returned, the sky had vanished into white. He stamped snow from his boots, his coat soaked, his jaw tense. It's coming hard, he said. We'll be shut in for a while. Evelyn nodded, trying to mask her fear. How long? Could be days. He poured himself a cup of coffee, then hesitated. Her face was pale, lips trembling, eyes distant. You all right? She forced a smile. Just tired. But she wasn't tired. She was breaking. The weight of the child, the storm, the memory of the man who had left her to face it all alone. It pressed on her until breathing felt like defiance. She rose to stir the fire, yet pain seized her mid-step. Her hand gripped the chair for balance. Jack was beside her instantly. Evelyn, she gasped, voice shaking. It's starting. For a heartbeat. Neither moved. Then the world snapped into urgency. Jack cleared the table, fetched blankets, boiled water. He'd helped deliver calves, never a child. But he'd be damned if he'd let her fight this alone. Hours passed in a blur of pain and thunder. Evelyn's cries filled the cabin, each one echoing through the hollow spaces of Jack's chest. He whispered rough comfort between her ragged breaths, steady words that felt borrowed from another man's voice. You're all right. Just breathe. You're stronger than you think. She clutched his hand until her nails cut into his skin. I can't. Yes, you can. He met her gaze, steady and sure. You're not alone, Evelyn. Not anymore. When the baby's cry finally broke through the storm, it was the sound of something new being born in both of them. Life from ruin, hope from silence. Jack wrapped the infant in a towel, his large hands trembling as he passed the child to her. Evelyn cradled the baby, tears spilling freely. A boy, she whispered, voice breaking on the word. He's perfect. Jack turned away, swallowing the emotion rising in his throat. You did good, he said softly. You did real good. The wind outside eased to a mournful sigh. Inside, time seemed suspended. Evelyn looked up at him, her face illuminated by firelight and exhaustion. You saved us, she murmured. He shook his head. No, you saved yourself. But when her fingers brushed his wrist in thanks, something in him faltered. The warmth of her touch spread through him, dangerous and undeniable. For weeks he had fought against this growing affection, this quiet pull toward a woman who belonged to another man. But now, in this fragile silence, surrounded by new life, the walls around his heart began to crumble. He reached to tuck a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was innocent, but her eyes lifted to his, shimmering with the same confusion and longing that burned in him. Jack, her whisper trembled like confession. He should have stepped back. He should have ended it there, built the distance between them again. But the storm outside had drawn them together too tightly, and loneliness had starved them both too long. When he leaned closer, their lips met, soft, hesitant, full of sorrow. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but of recognition, two lost souls grasping for warmth in a world that had taken too much. Evelyn broke away first, breath-catching. She looked down at the baby in her arms, guilt flooding her features. "This isn't right," she said. "I shouldn't." Jack turned from her, his jaw tight. "You don't owe me an apology." "I do," she whispered. "I owe everyone one." He ran a hand over his face, the weight of what they'd done pressing hard. "We're both just trying to survive." The fire popped, sending sparks upward. The baby stirred, a soft sound that pulled Evelyn back from the edge of tears. She kissed the child's forehead, whispering words Jack couldn't hear. When she finally looked at him again, her eyes were steadier. "I'll stay until the storm clears." After that, she didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. He knew. Jack nodded once, the motion slow, deliberate. "You'll have everything you need," he said. Outside, the storm began to fade, leaving the world blanketed in silence. Inside, the fire dimmed to glowing embers. Evelyn rocked the baby, the rhythm soft and soothing. Jack watched her from across the room, the ache in his chest a mixture of tenderness and regret. He knew the line between them had been crossed, and though the house now held life again, it also carried the quiet weight of a sin neither could name aloud. When dawn came, Jack stepped outside. The snow had stopped, the sky pale and clean. He looked across the white horizon and whispered to the wind, "You can't bury what's already dead." Behind him, the faint sound of a lullaby drifted from the window. Evelyn's voice, fragile but unbroken. It was the most beautiful sound he'd heard since Clara's laughter, and most dangerous, love's quiet consequence. Spring crept softly across the plains, washing the land in green after months of snow and silence. The river that once froze in stillness now moved again, carrying its thawed waters toward distant valleys. Life returned to the ranch in quiet ways. Birds in the eaves, buds in the garden, laughter too light to last. Evelyn stood on the porch with her son in her arms, the early sunlight warming her face. The baby had grown strong, his eyes wide and curious like the open sky above them. She smiled when he reached for the light, tiny fingers curling at the air as if trying to hold the day itself. Behind her, the screen door creaked. Jack stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. His gaze moved first to the child, then to her. The space between them had changed since that winter storm, filled with things neither dared to name. Respect, perhaps. Gratitude. Or the quieter ache of what could never be spoken. "You're up early," he said. Evelyn nodded. "He doesn't sleep much when the birds start singing." Jack chuckled under his breath, a sound so rare she always noticed. "Smart kid. Knows when the world's worth seeing." She smiled faintly, then turned her gaze to the hills. "He deserves a world better than what we came from." Jack leaned against the post beside her, silent for a moment. "You made this place better. Feels alive again." Evelyn looked down, her voice soft. "It was never just a place, Jack." The quiet between them deepened. A breeze swept across the field, carrying the scent of earth and rain. She wanted to reach out, to thank him, to touch his hand, but she didn't. The memory of that one night still lingered between them, delicate as glass and just as fragile. Inside, the kettle began to whistle. Evelyn turned to fetch it, grateful for the distraction. When she returned, Jack was standing by the fence, reading a letter. His shoulders were tense, his expression unreadable. "Bad news?" she asked. He hesitated before handing it to her. "It's for you." The handwriting stopped her heart. She didn't need to read the name at the bottom to know. "Mark." Her breath caught as she unfolded the paper. The words were desperate, pleading, an apology written too late. He claimed he'd found work out west, that he'd changed, that he wanted his family back. He asked her to come home. Evelyn read it twice, her hands trembling. "He's alive." Jack said nothing. "He want me to go to him," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "He says he can provide now, that he misses us." Jack's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "You should decide what's right for you." For him. He nodded toward the baby. Evelyn sank onto the step, the letter limp in her hand. "He left me when I needed him most, Jack. When I was carrying his child, starving, freezing, and he never came back." Jack knelt beside her, eyes dark, and unreadable. And you found a way to survive anyway. You don't owe him forgiveness just because he remembered your name. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. But if I stay, his voice dropped, then you'll always wonder. The words settled between them like dust in sunlight. Inevitable, heavy, true. That evening, Evelyn packed her few belongings in silence. The baby cooed softly from his cradle, unaware of the storm forming in her heart. Jack worked outside until the light failed, not trusting himself to look at her. When he finally came in, she was standing by the door, coat on, bag in hand. "I'll leave in the morning," she said. He nodded once, forcing calm into his voice. "The wagon will take you as far as the main road." Evelyn took a step closer. "I don't know what's waiting for me, Jack, but I can't forget what you've done for me for him. You gave us a chance when no one else would." He met her gaze. "You don't need to thank me." But she did anyway. "You deserve to be happy again. You deserve someone who stays." He looked away, a bitter smile ghosting his lips. "Some of us aren't built for staying, Evelyn. Some of us are just meant to help others find where they belong." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. The one he'd given her weeks ago, Clara's locket. "This isn't mine to keep." Jack closed her hand around it gently. "It's yours now." Clara would have wanted it that way. For a long time they stood there, saying nothing. Outside, the first stars began to rise, faint and trembling. Evelyn whispered, "Goodbye, Jack." He nodded, his voice rough. "Take care of him. And take care of yourself." The next morning, the wagon rumbled down the dirt road, dust curling in the golden light. Jack stood by the fence, hat in hand, watching until the figures disappeared into the horizon. When the ranch was quiet again, he turned back toward the house. Her presence still lingered in the folded blankets, the faint scent of bread, the tiny handprint on the window pane. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat by the fire, the silence pressing close, but no longer cold. The ache remained, but beneath it, something else had taken root, a strange peace. Outside, the fields shimmered in the light of a new day. Life would go on, just as it always had. Jack looked toward the horizon one last time and murmured, "Sometimes love isn't about keeping. It's about letting go." The wind carried his words across the land, gentle and sure. And somewhere down the road, Evelyn turned her face toward the rising sun, her heart heavy but unbroken.